Hey, hi, hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Eliza, and I make polymer clay jewelry over on Instagram, and just started making these tutorials for y'all on here. This is my second tutorial, and we're just going to kind of jump into it. It is going to be a abstract slab method with alcohol inks. It's a lot of fun, it's messy, but fun, and we get some really cool results, so stick around and we're going to just hop on into it.
Alright guys, let's start with our materials. We're going to work on a tile as always, but we do need a base clay. I use white. You're going to get the best color payoff with a white base, of course. You can try other colors. I had never done that before, but I did do a little experiment for you at the end, but I still prefer white overall. Next, we're going to need some alcohol. This is just the alcohol from under my sink. Honestly, I think even like a drinking alcohol would work, but you don't really want to waste that, so... Next, we're going to need inks. So the brand I love is the Jacquard Pinata inks. They're the most pigmented, and I've found that other brands I've used will fade after baking. These stay rather pigmented even after the bake, so I really recommend them. I have the Exciter pack, which gives you a really good color scheme, black, white, and this really awesome one that I'm almost out of. It's the one I use the most. It's the gold. The gold is very just shiny, packed with this like mica beauty. I love it, and I use it in all the slabs that I've made so far. It's a really cool effect, so I really love the Pinata brand overall. So now we're going to talk about the ways to spread the ink around. One way is with little brushes. These are just cheap little brushes from a little value kit. Don't use nice brushes for this because the alcohol ink can kind of gunk up a teeny bit. So cheap little brushes, maybe even Q-tips would work. I've never tried that. I'm sure it would work just as good. And then another way to spread ink around, we're going to use a straw. So we're literally just going to do some blow art all over it. They actually make like a little squeezy gun for blowing the air around, but a straw works just as good, and you probably already have one somewhere in your house. And then I highly recommend metal cutters when you cut your slab, because the inks can kind of gunk up your cutter and the metal is easier to clean. You can use plastic as well, but you are going to have to like soak them in some alcohol to really clean them after using. And that's about it. Let's get started on the slab. Okay, so before we get into the ink part itself, I do want to say that this is a messy technique. We're going to be blowing the inks around, and alcohol ink is so pigmented and it does stain. So do this in like your craft area. So I know that my table is wood and it's my craft table. It's going to get messy. I'm not stressed. I could lay down some covers if I'd like, but that's part of the process for me. I'm not worried about my craft table, but I'm working on top of my tile, and the ink will come off the tile. Even if it feels like it isn't, there are ways to get it off at the end, and I'll show you. But just a warning, messy project. Now let's get started. So as I'm putting the clay down, I'm really making sure there's no pockets of air underneath it. Because we are like blowing air onto it, you can actually pop the slab like up into the air, and it's kind of funny, but I'm also sealing the edges as much as I can. This will prevent any overspill from getting onto the back of the slab. But if it does happen, you know, it's an abstract slab and it can be messy. So I don't mind. It doesn't ruin a piece if it gets on the back, but to prevent it, I'm making sure that there's a good seal of the clay on the edges, especially. So one way I like to spread some ink around is I'm going to take the straw and actually pick up the alcohol with the straw and like put my finger on the back half. So it takes just a little bit, like a dropper amount. If you had a dropper, that would work, but I'm using what I have. And I'm just putting some on the slab. No set pattern or anything like that. Just trying to go with the flow here and make little puddles to drop some ink in. So my alcohol inks are very well loved. They're very messy. But if yours get like that too, don't open it over your slab like I was about to do. Because yeah, I'm pointing to how nasty they are. They're very well loved is all I can say. But it has little flakies come off. So just open it over to the side. And then we're going to start just dropping some ink down. It's very random. I'm starting with pink. I like pink. There's no rhyme or reason. You can pick whatever colors you'd like. But you also want to remember color theory. But wow. Do you see how fast it spreads? It's so pigmented. That's why I love working with these. You don't need a lot. I wasn't even using a full drop. And some people even get little bottles with needle droppers to use even less. You can do that. I just barely put any pressure and just right on, and it the alcohol literally grabs it and just spreads it in an instant, which you saw. Now I'm just taking a paintbrush, kind of doing a little spread around, see how I'm feeling. I pick up my straw and do very, very light pressure. You do not need to get lightheaded when you do this. The alcohol ink makes it spread so easily that you don't have to get dizzy when you do this. Now I'm taking a paper towel. I'm literally just gonna pick up the excess alcohol and get it as dry as I can. You don't have to do a lot of pressure here. Obviously you saw how fast that pink came out, but it leaves behind a cool wash of color, and now we have more control over the next color we're going to spread. And the way I like to start going from this point is I'll get a clean brush. I don't want to like keep dipping in and taint the little piece of like the bowl of alcohol I have. And I'm just going to start painting some lines of the alcohol in random patterns. Taking my next color, I'm going to go with yellow. And again, opening it not over the slab. I'm just tapping where those lines were, and you see how it just takes that pigment and carries it. This is where you're going to start getting some really cool color mixing. So yellow and pink, I'm going to get some cool orangey tones mixing in now. And I'm going to take my straw and just start going. And again, very light air on these. You don't have to go crazy. And you get these really natural looking like water droplet color effects. I think it's really beautiful and just so easy to do. From here, guys, you can take those two methods I have of spreading the color, which is like that wash of pink in the beginning, or like I'm doing here, painting more lines, and I'm going to start going in with blue to add that third color. You just have to be careful and use your knowledge of color theory from this point. When your colors start mixing, so when those blue and yellow become green, it's like probably my favorite color when those two mix. I love the greens, but when it mixes with the pink as well, it might get a little icky looking. So you just gotta be careful with your color theory. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see just how cool this is. I mean, if you remember in like elementary school, we used to do kind of just this blow art or the spin art, and it was like the coolest thing. That's kind of what this is, but more high fashion in my opinion. And I'm just taking the paper towel again and drying it off to see what we've kind of got. And one thing too with the paper towel, like mine has a texture to it. If you press harder, you can get that texture to transfer on. It's kind of cool. It'll give you again another cool like splotchy detail. But after this point, kind of go from here and see, do you want to fill up some of the white spaces that you have left, or maybe you want to mix a little bit more if you have like a solid patch of a pink or a yellow or a blue. Maybe you want to mix a little bit more onto that. I'm kind of just filling in that one white space that I had left. So right here, I'm just trying to get any overspill on the edges with that paper towel as well, just to minimize it getting under and staining the back piece. I'm happy with how the colors are looking on this slab so far. So the last thing I want to do is take this gold. So you do need to shake it. It separates, so give it a really good shake. There should be a ball in there. You should be able to hear it rattling if you're shaking it good enough. And once you get it all mixed up, I actually don't even use the alcohol with this. I find that it doesn't dilute it. It just will separate the mica from the actual base. It's a little weird that the alcohol ink doesn't give you like an even more payoff with this. I literally just give a little dot to my tile and try to use it fast because it will dry up. Then you can use the alcohol ink to kind of reactivate it. But I will just take a thin detail brush and paint straight on and do some lines. You can do thin ones or even like big splotches of gold. I've done both and both are beautiful. For this one, I kind of was gonna trace some lines with some gold just to give them some accents. Now I'm just gonna pick her on up, try and show you the back a little bit. So you see how it gets through just a little bit because we sealed it, not a lot. I've done it before where it coats the whole back. Doesn't ruin the piece again, but it is something to note. You can try to clean this up after baking with some acetone, but again, it doesn't bug me too much. I actually will just show the pieces as they're made and show the backs just to be transparent with my customers. But that, because it's part of the process, honestly. It's an abstract art. It gets messy, and I still think it's really cool, and it makes a really cool slab. So to clean your tile, you can let the alcohol inks literally just dry. These weren't super dry at this point, so it didn't work 100%. But if you let it dry all the way, you can just scrape them right off. And then taking a paper towel, do a little dip in your alcohol. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. And get the spots that wouldn't pop off with the blade. And then taking the blade one more time, just scrape them off. Super easy. If you paint a lot, I recommend painting on a tile as well, because you can color mix on the tile. And then once all your paint's dry, pop it off with the blade. It's much easier than cleaning the paint or like any kind of inks while they're still wet, because you spray it around a lot. So yeah, that's a little tip for you. I am going to let the slab dry a little bit before cutting into it, just because that gold pigmented ink, it has these like micas in it, and that takes a minute to dry. Otherwise it'll be really tacky and kind of gunk up your cutters. In the meantime, I'm going to experiment and do some inks on colored pieces of clay. I'd never done it before, so I just mixed up the blue and red and yellow. This is all Primo clay, and it's just the primary colors of it. I just took a teeny little chunk and not a lot to dye it. I still think that lighter colors are going to be best for this, but it was kind of cool to see how the colors danced differently on top of a colored base. So that's what we're going to do right now. So again, I'd never done this before. This was an experiment, but I also want to invite you to don't be afraid to play around with this yourself. So let's say you only do have like a darker colored clay. You could try maybe covering it with white alcohol ink, which again, it's so pigmented, and you paint this on, it will dry, and maybe then you can mix a little bit of colors on top of it. But you got to remember, when you put more alcohol on top of it, it's going to activate. So if you experiment, let me know. I added this in just so we could see what would happen if we did some colors on top of some pink, yellow, and blue. Alright, so we played around. I thought this turned out really well. It's a little messy. I didn't really seal them too well, obviously, but this was just an experiment. Anywhere we had some contemporary color mix-up on top of the base, it got a little gunky, but it still looks really cool. So for the blue, that is so oceany to me. I think that if you're going for that vibe, you can make that look so cool. The yellow is beautiful. I love the pinks. If you're just doing a bunch of blues and reds, the pink is beautiful. This was a really cool experiment to do. I'm gonna play around with it more. I recommend for you to as well, because yeah, I actually didn't think I would like this that much, but I'm glad I did. So it's a little messy, but that's okay. If you do get the ink on your hands like I do, it'll wash out easily, but if you just do like a dot of alcohol and mix it in with your hand soap, it'll get it off. If you have gloves though, that would be great. I just don't have any. But yeah, so now we have this pink. This one I think did the, not the worst, but anywhere the yellow and blue mixed with the green, it kind of looks the most muddy colors. But again, if you took the gold and covered up some of that muddy mixing, this would be really beautiful. This was a cool experiment, guys, so I highly recommend it. I just want to share cleaning the tile one more time, and I did actually spill all my alcohol ink. I knocked it over. So, you know, I'm just taking advantage of that and trying to clean it with that real quick. And then I'm going to take the blade and scrape off what I can't. This works really well for me, and it helps me just clean. I'm not a fan of like crafts that are really hard to clean, and this one looks really messy, and can be like if you get a stain on your clothing or something like that. So I recommend not using the clothing you love when you craft, but it's pretty easy to clean up your tile. So there we go. Nice and clean. So after letting this dry a good bit, I'm going to show y'all why I really only would recommend metal cutters here. If you want to use plastic, you can. It's just a pain to clean them because the ink will get on them. So you see here, this one I just used in a different slab, and it has a bunch of purple and blue stains on it. And I had knocked over my alcohol, but if I hadn't, I would have just dipped it in. So I'm going to paint on a little bit just to show you how you can clean them, but it's easier to clean the metal ones, hands down. So I just took a paper towel to try and wipe the edge, and you see I got a good bit of it off. It's just easier, and I'm not a big fan again of like crafts that take a lot to clean, or like if it messes up my tools. So if you have like a really fancy cutter or like a custom 3D printed cutter, I don't recommend it just because you don't want to damage or make it so you can't use it as much. And yeah, I'm gonna link these cutters I'm using below. They're both actually from Michaels. They're 2 little sets of shapes, and I just cut this slab. I try to get as much as I can, and then afterwards I will put together the pieces like a puzzle and try to make the best matches, because you see there's like some more green on the top of my slab and then there's more pink on the bottom. So I'm gonna try and make all the green pieces in one set and cut a certain shape from the green, and then cutting a different design from the pink. But again, I'm gonna get as much as I can out of this slab. So after I got all that cut up, I did want to show y'all like what I've been doing with the scraps from this project specifically, and I really am just marbling it up, but I think it's so funny. I called it this on Instagram, and it's what I'm gonna call it from now on whenever it is an alcohol ink scrap. It looks like your McDonald's M&M McFlurry, like after, you know, you mix it up a little bit. It gives you this really like weird, like faded but still pigmented like effect, and it's really cool. So I think the scraps from this slab are even really beautiful, and you see that really cool like effortless looking marble, and all I use is white clay and colored inks. So I think that this means that you can play around with it more than just dropping it on top. You can try mixing the inks into your clay and get a cool marble effect. The only thing I'll say is alcohol ink has this like bunching type thing where it almost looks like a speckled dot, and I'll show you when I mix it. I actually mix the whole little scrap together just to show you what you're left with, because I don't want to tell you a technique that's going to leave you with a bunch of unusable scraps. So just so you can see what it will look like. And yeah, I'm just mixing it in my machine off to the side, which you can't see, but there it is. It's pretty. It didn't dye the clay too much, and has that like weird speckle-ish effect. So really cool. I could easily see that being used in another project, so it's good to know. The one thing I want to add is how I bake these. I bake these the exact same as I bake everything. 275 for an hour. I'm using my regular oven. If you have a clay oven, I have no experience with that. I don't know if there's any difference baking the alcohol inks, but I'm using my regular kitchen oven, and I have a thermometer. So if you are doing clay and you don't have an additional thermometer telling you true temperature, I highly recommend getting one. Sometimes oven thermometers can be off. So my oven actually runs a little bit hot, so I need to go at 270, and that gets me at 275. Before I had the thermometer, I had no idea. So I recommend grabbing one. I got it off Amazon for like $10. They're not too expensive, but for these and all my clay, I do 275 for an hour. That's my baking time. And then I let them cool down in the oven completely. I won't take them out until they became a normal temperature. So yeah, that's my baking times. Real quick guys, I wanted to add how I seal these pieces. So I use polyurethane. This is like when you are staining any kind of woodworking, you can seal it with this. This is an interior lacquer, so it's not super heavy duty, because it doesn't have to be. Same like your earrings, it doesn't have to be, but if you wanted to use something more heavy duty, you could do resin. The only thing is I recommend having the proper gear because resin can be a little bit dangerous. But with the polyurethane, you can just do this in a well-ventilated area. I actually do mine outside on my balcony, and I just cover it with like a Tupperware or something so nothing can fall on it and dry on it. And how I do it is I take a nice fluffy like soft brush so I don't get as many brush strokes, and I do a thick, like a very generous coating so I can make sure I know that the whole piece is coated first, because it is somewhat see-through, especially if you did a thin layer at first. So I just make sure I get a nice coating. If you left it like this, it would dry all the way clear, but it's just not going to be even. So then I start taking my brush and just lightly pulling it off and popping it back off into the little container I'm using. And yeah, I just try to get it as smooth as I can from there. And that's all I do. Once I am done coating all my pieces, I take like a Tupperware and cover them, and I don't touch them for 24 hours, just so they're nice and cured and not sticky. And yeah, then we are ready to start like drilling and assembling the pieces. And if you see right there, I'm trying to just eliminate brush strokes as much as I can by taking like the flat part of the brush and just lightly smoothing them over. You can try using like a sponge or something like that. I like this brush. I feel like it's nice and it has a good ratio to like the surface area versus like a tiny detail brush or like a big like 2-inch brush. This one works really well for me. I've been using it for a while, so I like it. And also the polyurethane lasts a long time. Like, I don't think I've made a dent in that can.
And there we go. So after that, all you have to do is just assemble your pieces, and you're gonna get yourself some really cool, one-of-a-kind. Honestly, you just can't recreate this kind of stuff right here. You can try using the same colors and all that, but you're not gonna be able to recreate the slab, which is why I love this technique. You're gonna get a really cool result every single time. So there's that. And if you're waiting on some type of video for baking or sanding, assembling, tools, stuff like that, I'm actually filming that process in order in a series for you guys. So it'll be separate videos, but it's all gonna be the same set of earrings from start to finish. So it's gonna be as organized as I can and easy to follow for you. So give me a little time on that, but I will get that out as soon as I can. Speaking of videos, I gotta say thank you to my first video that I posted. I really wasn't expecting all the kind comments and messages I received, so thank you so much to you guys if you left a comment or sent me a DM, or if you tried the method out and tagged me in it. Like, seeing that was amazing. I didn't realize how happy that would make me feel, so thank you, really, thank you so much. Alright guys, as a way to say thank you, we are going to give away a pack of the alcohol inks to one of you. All you have to do is like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Any comment will get you entered. And we're going to let it run for a week. So Wednesday to Wednesday, September 23rd will be the last day to enter, and we'll pick a winner from that. So yeah, thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for stopping by. Hope to see you real soon.